how India has managed to trump WHO. Well, that's right. The World Health Organization, remember, had stalled the trials for hydrochloroquine, which is one of the leading ways and therapeutic drugs which has been accepted not just by the FDA but also across in European Union, and it continues in India for the frontline warriors. However, it had come out based on the Lancet survey that there should be a ban pending an inquiry into the mortality rate, because the Lancet survey had declared that it possibly would spike up the mortality rate. It was put on hold. However, now after due investigations, WHO is forced to come out and agree that there is absolutely no data and perhaps faulty data to have backed the Lancet report. Let's listen.
हम लोगों को तो ये जानकर खुशी हुई जब मैंने WHO की वेबसाइट पे देखा आज सुबह कि ट्रायल को दोबारा उन्होंने शुरू कर दिया है। तो ये करना ही था। उन्होंने जो बंद की थी ट्रायल, वो हम लोगों के विचार में वो सही निर्णय नहीं था, तो इसलिए उन्होंने जो किया है दोबारा, इसलिए हम लोगों को तो खुशी। जो कि लैंसेट एक बहुत अच्छा जर्नल है, जो जाना माना जर्नल है, और लैंसेट में अगर कोई पर्ची छपती है तो नेचुरल है कि लोग उसे मान लेंगे कि उसके रिजल्ट सही होंगे करके। लेकिन WHO ने एक अपना इंडिपेंडेंट इसका ओपिनियन करना चाहिए था, वो नहीं किया। वो अगर कर लेते तो अच्छा होता।
Well, let's go across back to Athar Khan, who's joining us. Also joining us, Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, the chairperson of Nephron, as well as Dr. Shashank Joshi, who is a member of the COVID Task Force of Maharashtra. Athar, if you can quickly set up the case here, what it does appear is that WHO, for the intents that we are not quite clear of, has depended and based clearly only on one study, which is also now found to be based on faulty data, the Lancet study. WHO had stalled the trials for HCQ, for which India is one of the leading manufacturers. Is there a larger geopolitical background to it as to why it would have done so?
Well, it would seem so, wouldn't it, Meghna, given the fact that the database has come into question, the data, in fact, given by the Sturgisphere group, in fact, which authored that particular report, which was, in fact, quoted by many health ministries across the world, including the WHO now. We understand that an investigation has revealed that even the Lancet and the New England Medical Journal has now questioned the validity clearly of these findings, and the fact that the database has come into question, a huge question mark on the Sturgisphere study itself. We understand that the World Health Organization had in fact used that particular study to, for a time at least, suspend all trials based on HCQ or hydroxychloroquine. Now we understand that the WHO is starting or resuming those trials, and as India have been saying for a very long time, even when the WHO suspended those trials, that India still believes that HCQ can be used as a prophylactic, at least for doctors as well as frontline healthcare workers, and India saw no problems even then. The ICMR saw problems, didn't see problems even then. But now an investigation by a newspaper, which they have revealed online as well, have claimed that this US-based company called Sturgisphere, whose employees also appear to include a sci-fi writer as well as an adult content model. Now imagine that's part of their so-called crack team that came up with the study in the first place. Now that in itself clearly puts a huge question mark on the validity of the data that they have used, and clearly the findings of that particular study. Now the fact that the Lancet and the New England Medical Journal is also calling them out also indicates that India perhaps has scored a victory as far as HCQ trials and the use of HCQ as a prophylactic for frontline medical workers and for patients is concerned. We also understand that US President Donald Trump has been pushing HCQ as a form of fighting COVID-19. Although I might add a rider here, there is no complete consensus even now, even after this study is revealed that the Sturgisphere study had big holes in it and the database in it that they used is in question. There is still no consensus about the real efficacy or the effectiveness of HCQ as a COVID-19 fighting drug. But however, we can still also presume and assume that there is a lot going on behind the scenes. WHO's dubious relationship with China has also been called into question here.
In fact, one of the persons who questioned the relationship of WHO dependency, as he called it, is President Trump himself, who had taken to Twitter. He said that WHO is Chinese-centric and it lacks independence from China. So, Dr. Shashank Joshi, do you think today is a great day for ICMR in India which had stuck to its guns and despite WHO stalling the trials, continued to stand by the studies done in India.
Yes, I completely agree because fundamentally the WHO had no right to temporarily even suspend the trial because HCQS is a very cheap drug. It is available for more than 50 years. We have used it in India extensively. Whole Asia has used it. Africa has used it. And all these Americans and British people who come to India, when they travel, they also use chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine. That time they never raised any questions. This drug clearly has three benefits. Number one, it prevents the severity of the disease. So all the healthcare workers who got the medicine have got, even if they got COVID, they got less severe COVID and they did not die. Secondly, it saves lives because it saves the lung explosion. And we need a randomized control study to prove or disprove it. And when this RCT only was pulled out because it's an off-patent drug, it's an economical drug, it's a made-in-India drug. Most of the drug bulk as well as the finished product comes from India. This is a big victory. And Indian Council of Medical Research from day one persisted and have consistently published it. In fact, it is very good that the WHO realized their mistake and they corrected it on time because relying, and we should also get away from a colonial mindset. It's time that we have faith in our own research agencies because they are also doing some good quality work. And it's important to recognize that.
Let me go across to Dr. Bagai as well. Dr. Bagai, do you think it's interesting the fact that Lancet study was contested by so many doctors worldwide and yet it was used as the base by the WHO to pause the trials on HCQ?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. I think we should rely on Indian intellect, Indian research, Indian data, which is being done. Just a couple of very quick points. In the last 2 months, and this is published data, in the last 2 months, more than 32,000 research articles have been published on COVID. And more than 60% of them have been withdrawn after publishing, primarily because of faulty methodology, inappropriate data analysis, or conflict of interest. Now, this puts a huge question mark on a lot of research articles which have been published. I think India has taken a stand. I think the stand remains validated. It's important for viewers to understand when you talk of HCQ as hydroxychloroquine, it's for COVID. So it's in two parts. One is, are you talking in terms of treating mild, moderate, or severe, or are you talking for pre-exposure prophylaxis and post-exposure prophylaxis? So I think ICMR's guidelines are very, very clear. I think there is a distinct benefit. It should be used, I must add, it must be used under medical caution. It should be monitored. There are some side effects. We should screen for them. I don't think keeping hydroxychloroquine at home at random for people is advised. But the Indian data, what it shows so far, that it is useful. It should be used with precaution under guidance, under medical supervision. What I want to really add is there's even as recent as 3rd of June, which is yesterday, New England Journal of Medicine, people have actually questioned the entire database of how analysis is being done for research. So in the end, I would really like to make one statement. Science goes on evidence-based data. It goes when you can do no harm to the patient. So whatever research takes its time, I think it should allow to take time. We should not compress and overhurry science and research. So to abolish studies which are ongoing would be a great mistake. So I'm happy that WHO has corrected this mistake.
But we'll also come back, Dr. Bagai, and I want to take your opinion on keeping politics away from research in health across the world. But before that, a quick word from Dr. Joshi also. Now, Dr. Joshi, one of the worries for many people in India, especially the pharma companies, is the growing war between India and China when it comes to pharma, considering India produces about 47% of US's supplies of HCQs. However, when it comes to China, China is also between China and India, about 70 to 80% of all drugs which is being supplied to US is coming from either of these two countries. So which is why this is a highly competitive market. Should we be very wary about what world bodies, many who are claiming that WHO is also Chinese centric, what world bodies are going to put any kind of steps or hurdles in the way of Indian innovation and research?
I think you're very right. India is right at the top in the generic pharma and reverse chemistry. We have the best reverse chemist on the planet Earth. but a lot of the active principles were originally coming from China. But now in the Make in India, Made in India campaign, we are one of the largest exporters. And in the post-COVID era, you will see the Indian pharma right at the top on globe. In fact, the largest generic manufacturers, there was a huge competition between India and China. But when it comes to quality, US FDA has an office in New Delhi, and they have the largest number outside of United States, US FDA inspections in India, and largest number of outside United States FDA approved plant by US FDA are in India. So Indian pharma industry is far ahead of the rest of the world, including China, and therefore any attempt to skirt it down, as well as the Indian innovators, Indian scientists, Indian chemists are far ahead, and the pharmacologists. So I think this is a very good boost, and WHO, it is mandatory for them to do a good randomized control study. As Dr. Bagai rightly said, that we should have the right evidence and we should do it systematically. You can't just puncture a study in between just because of a Lancet report, which is very questionable in the first place. So I think it is a very important step in that direction. So in the pre-exposure prophylaxis, it works. Post-exposure prophylaxis, NEGM published a study yesterday that it doesn't work. And also the doses are very defective. Even in the current WHO study, they are using double dose, which India uses, and for 10 days, while we use half the dose for 5 days. So I think it's time that they look up to ICMR, and ICMR keeps on generating more and more data to teach the world how to treat COVID prophylaxis and COVID treatments.
Oh, that's a very interesting point that you've made, that WHO should perhaps take some lessons from ICMR. However, Dr. Bagai, going back to interference of politics in World Health Organization, many are saying that WHO is being persuaded gently by China, to put it lightly. Now, interestingly, WHO hailed the singing star Peng Liyuan as the goodwill ambassador. What they didn't mention in WHO's website is that she is also the wife of Xi Jinping, the Chinese premier. Do you think this cozy comfort club, which many are alleging between China and the WHO, which has also delayed the probe into the origins of COVID, is something that India should be very wary of, especially when it comes from any orders from WHO?
That's an interesting one. So if you notice, or at least on Twitter and other social medias and other platforms, a lot of the tweets which were actually mentioning and questioning the role and the essence of WHO during this pandemic were actually instantly removed, saying that it is sensitive information or sensitive data. Now, as scientists, as doctors, we can never lose the power of critically analyzing any data, and we should, as doctors, never lose the power to question. However stupid the question may be, we always must have the power to question and reason. That's science, that is data, and that is discussion, that is collaboration. So I think there is a lot of subtle movement which is taking place, which is in the progression mode for India. And I think we are not wary. I think the world is wary. I think post-COVID, I think India medically, in terms of clinical sciences, with the admit now more concentrating on research, pharma, Indian vaccines, the next boost, as far as I'm concerned, is going to be Indian medical devices, and medical technology in terms of radiology equipment is going to be from Indian soil. Coming back directly to WHO, if you ask me personally, I think whatever information they give, it has been staggered, it has been interrupted, it has been contrary to what they were saying the previous day, and it has created huge amount of emotion. Please understand, in the medical world, a lot of doctors, the vast majority of doctors, tend to rely on the science which is published. And damage is already done, even if you withdraw it, if the methodology is wrong.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Bagai, as well as Dr. Shashank Joshi, for joining us here on the show, as well as Athar, of course.